Welcome to Fluent Daily, the English listening channel for advanced learners at B2 and C1 level. Every episode features a rich, flowing conversation in natural English on a topic that is genuinely worth thinking about: history, psychology, science, philosophy, and more. There are no simplified sentences here, no slow speech, no vocabulary drills. Just real English spoken naturally on ideas that matter. This is Fluent Daily. Let's get into it.
Today we have a great story, so let's get started right now. You are walking out of a conference room or maybe you just finished a coffee date and you have this very specific, almost, haunting frustration hanging over you.
Oh yeah, it's a heavy feeling.
Right. And if you are an advanced English learner, you know exactly what feeling I'm talking about. It is a completely unique wall that you hit after years of studying.
Because you've put in the hours. I mean, you've really worked for it.
Exactly. You've put in the hours. Your grammar is genuinely flawless. You understand the subjunctive. Your vocabulary is vast. Honestly, you probably know more obscure English adjectives than I do.
Oh, without a doubt.
And when you speak, your meaning is crystal clear. Like, nobody is confused about what you were trying to say. But the moment you open your mouth, something about the cadence or the word choices or the rhythm just instantly marks you as a non-native speaker.
You sound just slightly off.
Right, you don't sound quite natural. And the worst part is not even the feeling itself. The worst part is that you cannot pinpoint exactly why you sound different. And because you don't know why, you have zero idea how to actually fix it.
Yeah, that is an incredibly isolating plateau to be stuck on. Because the tools that got you to this advanced stage, they are entirely useless for getting you past it.
Which is so frustrating.
It is. Think about the beginner stage, right? Beginners do not care about sounding natural. They are just trying to remember how to conjugate a basic irregular verb, or, they're just trying to order a sandwich without accidentally insulting the cashier.
Yeah, they are operating in pure survival mode.
Exactly. The gap between what they want to say and what they can say is massive. But the solutions are obvious, right? Learn more words, learn the basic rules. And on the flip side, native speakers also never experience this specific frustration.
Because they didn't study it.
Right. Native speakers never sat down to deliberately construct a language from a set of blueprints. We just absorbed the messy reality of it from childhood. So this naturalness gap, this massive chasm between English that is technically perfect and the English that native speakers actually produce, it's a burden carried completely alone by the advanced learner.
So we're going to completely deconstruct that naturalness gap today in this deep dive. We are breaking down the exact hidden mechanics of why fast, natural English feels so alien compared to the textbook English you spent, years mastering.
It's a total teardown of everything you thought you knew.
It really is. But before we look at the solutions, we have to look at the immediate trap people fall into. When you hit this plateau, the automatic assumption is, well, it's my accent. I need to spend 80 hours doing mouth exercises to fix my vowels.
But yeah, that instinct is almost universal. And unfortunately, it is almost always pointing you in the completely wrong direction.
Really? Even if their accent is thick?
Well, accent reduction is fine if intelligibility is your issue. If people can't understand the words you are saying, sure. But the naturalness gap is a totally different beast. You can have a flawlessly neutral, broadcast quality accent and still sound completely unnatural.
Because it's not about the sounds of the letters?
Exactly. Because the gap exists between technically correct English and the English native speakers actually produce in the wild. Grammar instruction systematically, deliberately ignores this gap. It actually has to.
Wait, why does it have to?
Because textbooks were designed to teach you how to be accurate. They teach you how to be understood and, how to pass a standardized test. They were never designed to teach you how to be natural. Accuracy and naturalness are just completely different linguistic domains.
Okay, so if the thousands of grammar rules I memorized do not actually dictate what makes English sound natural, something else is steering the ship. And I think that points us straight at the first major blind spot, which is how words actually pair up with each other.
Yes, the social life of words.
Right. If I look at a dictionary, a word has a definition. But in the real world, words have friends. They have social groups.
They absolutely do. In linguistics, we call this collocation. If you want to understand why your technically perfect sentences sound weird, collocation is the single most important factor to look at first.
Okay, define that for us.
Collocation is simply the tendency of specific words to appear together in natural language with a frequency that completely defies random chance.
Let me put this in real-world terms, because I think analogies help here. Think about eating a bowl of vanilla ice cream.
Okay, sounds good so far.
Right. Now imagine pouring ketchup over it.
Oh, gross, yeah.
But logically, both are food, right? Both are objectively delicious. But if you combine them, your brain instantly rejects it. It is a culinary violation.
That captures the sensation perfectly. A native speaker's ear reacts to a wrong collocation the exact same way your stomach reacts to ketchup on ice cream.
It's just a visceral rejection.
It is. You can know the dictionary definition of every single word in a sentence. You can assemble those words using flawless subject-verb agreement, and you can still produce a sentence that completely alarms the native ear because you combine words that do not pragmatically collocate.
You built something that is structurally sound but pragmatically bizarre.
Exactly.
I am going to challenge the logic of this, though, because this is where learners want to pull their hair out. Let's look at the classic examples. We say heavy rain and we say strong tea.
Right, the classics.
Now, if I look in at the source, heavy, powerful, and strong are synonyms. Their dictionary definitions overlap heavily. So if I'm a logical human being, I should be able to say powerful tea or strong rain. The meaning is identical. My brain is doing the math correctly. Why is one right and the other wrong?
The brutal truth about language is that it does not care about your math.
It really doesn't.
It doesn't. It is gloriously, frustratingly arbitrary. There is no underlying foundational logic that dictates why rain is heavy but wind is strong. It does not follow literal meanings, and it certainly does not follow grammatical rules. It is simply the conventional pairing that the English language settled into over hundreds of years of accumulated use.
It's just habit.
Pure habit.
Yeah.
Think of a public park with paved sidewalks. Over time, people take a shortcut across the grass. Thousands of people walk that exact same route until a dirt path is worn into the ground. That dirt path is a collocation.
I love that visual.
Right. And the learner who learned English from a map, which is essentially a textbook, they only know the paved sidewalks. They walk on the pavement, which is technically the correct way to go, but the native speakers are all taking the dirt path. When you use the technically correct but uncollocated phrase, you're announcing that you aren't from around here.
I see this constantly with what we call the light verbs.
Oh, yes. The worst offenders.
They really are. A non-native speaker might sit down in a meeting and say, you know, I need to do a decision. And the native speaker understands them perfectly. Nobody is confused about the intent. But a tiny subconscious alarm bell goes off.
Yeah, it just rings a little hollow.
Or a learner might tell their kid to give attention to the teacher. Again, completely understandable, perfectly grammatical, but it sounds like a translation, not a natural English thought.
Those light verbs are the absolute biggest hurdle for advanced learners. We are talking about verbs like make, do, have, and take. In linguistic terms, they are called light because they have been emptied of most of their heavy, specific semantic meaning.
They're just structural.
Basically, when you take a picture, you aren't physically grabbing something and walking away with it. The verb relies entirely on the noun it is paired with to generate the meaning. They are the glue holding everyday spoken English together.
But they behave like total anarchists. There is absolutely no systematic pattern to how they pair up.
Right.
You do the shopping, but you make a mess. You have a conversation, but you take a break. You do research, make progress, have a look, take advantage. If you try to reverse engineer a rule out of that list, you will literally drive yourself insane.
And people try. They really try to say things like, well, make is for creating something new, and do is for an ongoing activity.
Which sounds great until you test it.
Exactly. Because then you look at make a decision versus do a favor, or make an exception versus do business, and the rule just collapses instantly.
Oh.
If you say make the shopping or do a mess, you are outing yourself as a non-native speaker in a millisecond.
And the tragedy is the learner often thinks they made a grammar mistake.
All the time. They will go back and study verb tenses for hours. But saying make the shopping is not a grammar error, and it's not a vocabulary error. You know what make means. You know what shopping means. It is purely a collocation failure. You chose a semantically plausible verb that happens to be the wrong conventional pairing.
So if the entire system is completely arbitrary and rules don't work, my immediate instinct is to brute force it. I want to go online, download a PDF of the top 1,000 English collocations, make a massive deck of flashcards, and memorize them until my eyes bleed.
I see learners do this every day.
Yeah.
And that instinct is exactly what keeps them trapped on the plateau. You cannot memorize your way out of a collocation deficit.
Why not? If I memorize them, I know them.
Because It is neurologically impossible to recall flashcard data fast enough in the middle of a live, spontaneous conversation. Collocation dictionaries exist, and there are fantastic reference tools when you are writing an essay where you have time to think. But your active spoken vocabulary, the phrases you can produce spontaneously without thinking, is only built through one mechanism.
Massive exposure.
Massive, extensive exposure to authentic English in context.
Right.
You have to encounter the phrase heavy rain 50, 100, maybe 200 times in meaningful situations.
Yeah.
In books and podcasts and movies.
Because your brain is a pattern recognition machine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Eventually, the statistical frequency of heavy and rain appearing together overrides your logical desire to say strong rain. But you can speed this up. You have to shift your attention. When you are listening to a podcast, stop listening just for the overall meaning. Start deliberately noticing the light verbs and the adjective-noun pairings. You have to train your ear to expect the pairing, not test your memory to recall it.
This requires a total shift in how you consume media. You're moving from reading the dictionary to watching the social dynamics of the words.
Yes, that's exactly it.
But let's play devil's advocate here. Let's say a listener does this. They spend 6 months immersing themselves. They master the collocations. They know all the right words that go together. They walk into a room, they open their mouth, and they still sound incredibly unnatural.
Oh, absolutely.
Because having the right words is completely useless if you were using them in the wrong room. Which brings us to our second huge point.
The register problem. This is the great trap of the advanced learner. Think about how someone actually becomes an advanced learner in the first place. You do not reach an advanced level just by chatting at a pub.
No, you're studying.
Right. You reach it by reading textbooks, analyzing academic papers, consuming formal news broadcasts, and taking standardized tests like the TOEFL or IELTS.
You basically spend 5 years absorbing the vocabulary of academics and journalists.
Precisely. And what happens? You build an internal database of English that is technically flawless but relentlessly formal. When you apply that database to casual human interaction, the result is jarring. You sound stilted. You sound cold. You sound like a politician reading a beautifully prepared press release while sitting on a couch at a relaxed weekend barbecue.
It's like someone showing up to a backyard pool party wearing a bespoke 3-piece tuxedo.
Yes.
The tailoring is impeccable. The fabric is gorgeous. There is nothing objectively wrong with the clothes, but they are making everyone who is standing around in a swimsuit holding a hot dog feel incredibly uncomfortable.
That is exactly how native speakers experience register mismatches. It acts as a form of social friction. They might not be able to articulate why, but they feel that you are placing an invisible barrier between them and you. Casual English is not a lesser version of formal English.
Right, it's not just lazy.
Exactly. It is not just formal English with slang thrown in. It is an entirely separate register with its own structural expectations, its own rhythm, and its own vocabulary. We really have to look at the classic mismatches that instantly identify a textbook learner.
The connectors are the biggest red flag for me. Using transition words like however and therefore in a spoken casual conversation.
Oh, it's painful. If you are at a coffee shop and you say to your friend, you know, I wanted to order the latte, however, they were out of oat milk, therefore I chose the cold brew. You sound like an essay that grew legs and started talking.
It's so rigid.
A native speaker in that exact context will always use but and so. I wanted a latte, but they were out of oat milk, so I got cold brew.
The Latin versus Germanic roots of English play a huge role here, don't they? I mean, this goes back centuries.
They absolutely do, and this is a fascinating piece of linguistic history that explains so much of this frustration for learners. Because of the Norman conquest in 1066, the English language essentially absorbed a massive amount of French and Latin vocabulary on top of its base Germanic vocabulary.
2 languages stacked on top of each other.
Basically. And over centuries, the French and Latin words became associated with the ruling class, the law, the church, and academia, while the Germanic words remained the language of the common people, the home, the farm.
So the formal register is literally the language of the aristocracy, and the casual register is the language of the peasants.
Exactly. When a learner uses commence instead of start, or proceed instead of go ahead, or purchase instead of buy, they're reaching into that Latinate, aristocratic vocabulary. If a learner says, I need to purchase some apples, it feels unbelievably heavy for a grocery run.
It really does. Assistance instead of help. Request instead of ask. In writing, this is beautiful. In spoken conversation, it creates distance.
But the most dangerous register trap isn't even vocabulary. It is the mechanics of grammar itself. We have to talk about contractions.
Oh, this is a big one.
The choice to say, I am versus I'm, or do not versus don't. Advanced learners frequently avoid contractions. Why? Because somewhere in their formal training, an English teacher told them that contractions are informal, lazy, or inappropriate for academic writing.
Which is true for academic writing.
Yes. So, wanting to be accurate and safe, the learner carries that rule into their spoken English. They use the full uncontracted forms. What they do not realize is how a native speaker's brain processes a lack of contractions in a casual setting.
It doesn't process it as polite, it processes it as aggressive.
Highly aggressive. If we're having a casual chat and you look at me and say, I do not want to go to the restaurant, using that full do not, my subconscious reads that in one of two ways. Option 1, you are a non-native speaker making a slight pragmatic error. Option 2, and this is the default for a native error, you are using deliberate, forceful emphasis to draw a hard boundary.
When a native speaker refuses to contract a word, it usually means they are annoyed, angry, or trying to discipline someone. Think about a parent talking to a toddler throwing a tantrum. Going to tell you again.
Every word is isolated for maximum impact.
Exactly. By striving for grammatical perfection and avoiding contractions, the advanced learner accidentally adopts the cadence of a scolding parent. They sound rigid or upset simply because they failed to adopt the structural norms of the casual register.
This is exactly why you cannot learn conversational English from a textbook. The textbook teaches you the tuxedo. It does not teach you how to behave at the pool party.
So, if casual speech operates on a completely different rhythm, and you have to strip out your academic connectors like however and therefore what replaces them, how do you actually connect your thoughts together in real time if you aren't using formal transitions? What is the invisible connective tissue of an actual conversation?
You are entering the realm of discourse markers. This is the steering wheel of natural communication, and it is an area where advanced learners are almost universally deficient.
I'm going to stop you right there. Because if you are talking about words like, every single listener is currently screaming at their device.
Oh, I know they are.
We are actively conditioned to despise these words. Every speech coach, every English teacher, every corporate communications seminar tells you that these are verbal fillers. We are taught that using them makes you sound nervous, uneducated, and hesitant. We are trained to mercilessly strip them out of our vocabulary. And now you are telling us they are the secret to sounding natural.
We need to completely destroy the filler myth right now. It is one of the most damaging pieces of pseudo-linguistic advice in existence.
Wow, okay. Tell me why.
Are these words sometimes used as a crutch by someone who is terrified of public speaking? Yes, of course. But in the context of fluent, natural, everyday native speech, discourse markers are not meaningless filler. They are not brain farts. They are a highly sophisticated, incredibly complex, pragmatic system. They manage the flow of the conversation, they signal your relationship to the listener, and crucially, they signal your attitude toward the very words you are saying.
Let's break down how they actually function, because when learners strip them out entirely, they don't sound confident, they sound robotic.
They sound unequivocal. When you remove discourse markers, every single sentence you speak lands like a 100% certain, indisputable declaration of fact. There is no negotiation with the listener. There is no nuance. It sounds like a machine reading data from a spreadsheet. Discourse markers provide the emotional and cognitive texture of real-time human thought. Let's look at the mechanics of specific markers, starting with well.
Okay, so a learner might just say, I think we should cancel the project. But a native speaker might say, well, I think we should cancel the project. What is that well actually doing?
It acts as a cognitive buffer and a social signal. When a native speaker starts a response with, well, they're signaling to the listener that the question or situation requires complex consideration.
It's buying time, but in a polite way.
Exactly. It often indicates that the upcoming answer might run contrary to expectations, or that it isn't a simple yes or no binary. It tells the listener, I am actively processing this, and I am about to offer a nuanced perspective. It softens the blow of a disagreement.
Okay, what about actually? Learners definitely use actually, but usually because they are directly translating a word that means currently or now in their native language, the classic false friend. But how does a native English speaker deploy it?
In native pragmatics, actually it's a pivot mechanism. It signals a correction, a gentle contradiction, or a sudden shift in perspective. If you say, I assume the meeting is at noon, and I reply, actually it got moved to 2, the word actually serves to soften the contradiction.
It takes the sting out of being wrong.
Yes. It says, contrary to our shared assumption, new information has arrived. Without it, Saying the meeting got moved to 2 can feel a bit blunt or corrective.
Then there is the incredibly common, As in, it's not the worst idea I've ever heard.
Right. I mean, it's a signal of elaboration or recalibration.
Yeah.
You use it when you are about to expand on a thought you just had, or when you realize your previous statement was slightly too strong. You want to adjust the nuance so the listener understands your exact intent. It shows that your thought process is live and active.
And then we have, this one gets demonized relentlessly. It was just, a really overwhelming day.
The hatred for, completely ignores its profound social function. It is a solidarity marker. When you say, you are actively seeking alignment with the listener, you're doing a tiny implicit check-in that asks, are you following my logic? Have you ever felt this specific emotion? Can we establish common ground right here?
So it's not hesitation at all?
Not at all. It invites the listener into your experience. It is a tool of empathy, not hesitation.
We have to tackle the final boss of discourse markers. It is the ultimate villain of the English classroom. Everyone associates it with the stereotype of a Californian teenager who can't form a coherent thought.
The linguistics of, in contemporary casual English are staggeringly complex. It serves multiple highly specific functions. First, it acts as an approximator. If I say there were 50 people at the restaurant, I am signaling that 50 is a rough estimate, saving me from being held to strict numerical accuracy.
Which is very useful.
Very. Second, and more importantly, it is the modern tool for reported speech and internal monologue.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah,
no way. And he was like, yes way.
Exactly. When you use, to introduce speech, you are signaling to the listener that you are not providing a verbatim word-for-word quote. You are providing a dramatic reenactment of the vibe, the emotion, or the general intent of what was said. It frames the narrative as a performance.
If you use said, and I said no way, and he said yes way, it feels like a formal police report.
It's just too stiff for a casual story. And there are so many of these markers.
Yeah, the source material lists a whole arsenal of them.
Right.
Basically, honestly, kind of, sort of. Anyway, so, look, listen. I guess, to be honest, having said that, mind you, then, again, fair enough, fair point. If you try to imagine navigating a complex, emotional, high-stakes conversation with a friend without using a single one of those phrases, you realize how impossible it is.
You would sound entirely inhuman. Imagine saying, I went to the store was closed. I returned home. It was unfortunate.
You become a data delivery system.
Exactly. These markers are the evidence that you are actively evaluating your own words while you are speaking them and that you care how the listener is receiving them. A speaker who lacks them might be grammatically flawless, but they lack the texture of a human mind at work.
Okay, so we have built the architecture. We know how words pair up, we understand the social register, and we have the markers to steer the thoughts. But we are still in the brain. We have to move down to the physical mechanics of the mouth itself.
The physics of speaking.
Right. Because here is the brutal reality. Spoken English and written English are not just different styles of the same language. For all practical physical purposes, they are entirely different languages.
The physical reality of speaking deeply clashes with the mental model of the advanced learner. Think about how you learned English. You learned by looking at words printed on a page, black text on white paper, clear, distinct spaces between every single word, punctuation marks telling you exactly where to stop. Your brain built a mental model of English as a series of separate, discrete blocks.
And because you learned it as blocks, you try to speak it as blocks. You try to pronounce every single word clearly and separately, exactly as it appears in the dictionary.
And paradoxically, by trying to be perfectly clear and articulate, you end up sounding completely unnatural and sometimes even harder for a native ear to understand.
Think of it like handwriting. Written English on a page is print individual, separate letters. But spoken English is cursive. You do not pick up the pen between the letters. The end of one word flows seamlessly into the beginning of the next.
That cursive effect is driven by the physical economy of the human mouth. The mouth is inherently lazy. It wants to get from point A to point B with the least amount of muscular effort possible. This results in two massive phonological shifts in spoken English: reductions and connected speech. Let's look at reductions first.
These are the classics. Want to becomes wanna, going to becomes gonna, have to becomes hafta.
Kinda becomes kinda, a lotta becomes a lotta, did you becomes didja, would you becomes wouldsya.
Now, I know that traditionalists and purists will hear didja and wouldsya and completely lose their minds. They argue that this is sloppy, degenerate English and that we are encouraging learners to speak badly.
That perspective is based on a fundamental ignorance of how phonetics actually work. These are not careless corruptions. They are not mistakes. They are the standard, predictable, rule-governed phonological reductions of casual spoken English. A neurosurgeon, a Supreme Court justice, and a university literature professor will all naturally produce didya and wanna in spontaneous casual conversation without even realizing it.
Because their mouths are just being efficient.
Because their vocal tracts are optimizing the airflow and muscle movement.
So if an advanced learner goes out of their way to perfectly pronounce the T in want and the T in to I want to go, they are actively sabotaging their naturalness.
They are producing a version of English that only exists in text. It breaks the rhythmic expectation of the native listener. But reductions are just individual words shrinking. The real magic, the true cursive handwriting of the mouth, happens across word boundaries. This is connected speech.
This is where words literally bleed into each other.
When native speakers talk, they do not pause between words. They only pause at the end of a thought group. Within that thought group, the final consonant of one word will physically link directly to the initial vowel of the next word. Syllables that are unstressed will often disappear entirely, or the vowel will degrade into a weak, neutral sound called a schwa and sound.
Let's give a highly specific, concrete example so people can hear the mechanics. Take the phrase, turn it off. If you look at it on a page, it is 3 distinct words. T-U-R-N space, I-T space, O-F.
If you ask a native speaker to read it slowly, they will say, turn it dead off. But in the physical reality of a fast conversation, the rules of connected speech take over.
Walk us through the physics of it.
Okay. The tongue is positioned at the alveolar ridge, right behind the top teeth for the N in turn. Because the next word, it starts with a vowel, the mouth doesn't bother stopping, the N just jumps across the space and becomes the beginning of the next syllable. Then, the T in it finds itself sandwiched between two vowels, so the vocal cords keep vibrating, turning it into a soft D sound, a flap. It jumps over to the O in.
So it completely transforms.
The 3 words collapse into a single fluid sound shape. It sounds approximately like turn night off.
Turn night off. It really does sound like a brand new 3-syllable word.
Let's look at a longer, more extreme example. I'll be back in an hour.
Yeah.
6 distinct words on the page. If you pronounce each word using its citation form, which is the exact, isolated, perfect pronunciation you hear when you click the audio icon in an online dictionary, you say, I will be back in an hour.
Very robotic.
In reality, a native speaker delivers this as a single, unbroken exhalation of air. The K in back links to the I in in. The N in links to the A in an. The N in an links to the H in hour, which is silent, so it links to the vowel. The unstressed vowels all collapse into schwas. It becomes a rapid stream of sound. I'll be back in an hour.
I'll be back in an hour. This entirely explains the listening comprehension wall. This is why learners can read a novel by Charles Dickens perfectly, but if they watch a casual YouTube vlog, they feel like they don't speak English. They are listening for 6 distinct blocks of sound, but the native speaker's mouth just threw one giant blended sound blob at them.
Exactly. And the reverse is true when the learner speaks. If you rely on the dictionary citation forms for every single word you say, your speech is technically accurate and people will understand you, but perceptually you sound alien. You lack the physical fluidity, the momentum, the cursive nature of true spoken English. Your mouth is working too hard.
So, the mechanics of the mouth smooth everything out and blend the sounds together. But that physiological blending leads us to a much more dangerous kind of blending, which is how you blend your intentions into the social fabric of the room. We have to talk about the directness calibration problem. I call this the pragmatics of politeness.
If connected speech is a physical minefield, politeness pragmatics is a psychological minefield. Every language and culture has a specific politeness system. It governs when it is appropriate to be direct and when you are required to be indirect. The English system is entirely unwritten, heavily dependent on context, and incredibly nuanced.
And because it is unwritten, textbooks completely fail to teach it.
They do. As a result, advanced learners frequently miscalibrate. They commit these completely invisible pragmatic errors. They are invisible to a grammar checker, but they glow like neon signs to a native speaker. The learner ends up coming across as either way too blunt and aggressive or way too evasive and confusing, purely based on the conversational norms of their native culture.
I want to look at the business context first, because this is where careers are literally impacted. Let's say we are in a strategy meeting in London or New York. Someone pitches a marketing plan that I know for a fact is going to lose the company money.
Okay, high stakes.
Right. Isn't it objectively better, more efficient, and more professional to just look at them and say, I disagree with your proposal. It is grammatically perfect, it is completely unambiguous, and it saves everyone time. Why on earth do we have to do a complicated social dance around it?
Because you are violating a fundamental concept in Anglo-American professional culture known in sociological terms as face-saving.
What exactly is face in this context?
Face refers to the public self-image, the dignity, and the social standing of the people in the room. In Anglo-American professional environments, preserving the social harmony and protecting the face of your colleagues is often prioritized equally with the actual literal information being debated.
So if I say, I disagree with your proposal, I am attacking their face.
Yes. Over-directness and expressing disagreement, delivering negative feedback, or rejecting an idea registers as a direct threat to that person's competence and to the harmony of the team. It does not register as efficient business communication. It registers to the native ear as unusually blunt, aggressive, arrogant, or downright rude.
So saying I disagree is functionally a social error.
In many professional English contexts, absolutely.
Yeah.
A native speaker instinctively knows to use hedging language. They pad the room with linguistic bubble wrap. Instead of I disagree, they will say, I'm not sure I'm fully convinced by this approach. Or, I see where you're going with that, but I wonder if we might want to consider the budget constraints. Or, that's an interesting angle, however, looking at the data.
It's the art of the soft no. You're wrapping a brick in a velvet blanket before you throw it.
Precisely. On a literal semantic level, you are being less clear. But on a pragmatic level, you are communicating the disagreement perfectly to any native speaker in the room while simultaneously maintaining the professional relationship. If you just drop the hammer with, I disagree, you might win the logical argument, but you severely damage your working relationship because you failed the politeness calibration. People will label you as difficult to work with, and you will have no idea why, because your grammar was perfect.
Wow. But there is a massive flip side to this calibration problem. If that is over-directness, what happens when learners are over-indirect?
This often happens with learners coming from what sociologists call high-context L1 cultures. L1 just means your first language, your mother tongue. High-context cultures, like many East Asian or Middle Eastern cultures, traditionally rely heavily on indirect communication. Meaning is implied through context, body language, and reading the room, rather than explicitly stated. It is considered polite to avoid direct refusals or strong assertions of personal preference.
So they take that incredibly polite framework and map it onto casual English.
Yes, and they miscalibrate in the opposite direction. Because in casual social contexts, English norms actually heavily favor directness.
In what specific scenarios?
Expressing personal preferences, declining casual invitations, or giving an opinion when directly asked. Let's say you invite a native English-speaking colleague to lunch, and you ask, do you want to get Italian or Mexican food? A learner from a high-context culture, desperately trying to be polite and deferential, might answer, whatever is convenient for you. I am happy with anything. Please, you choose.
Which in their culture makes them a gracious guest.
But to the native English speaker, that response can feel slightly evasive, unhelpful, or even burdensome. The native speaker asked a direct question to solve a logistical problem. The polite English norm in this specific casual context is to just state a preference to help move the decision forward. I'd love Mexican, if that works for you. But being too indirect, the learner misses the mark just as badly as the person who dropped the hammer in the boardroom.
It's a terrifying tightrope walk. You have to know when to use the velvet blanket and when to just give a straight, unvarnished answer. So I want to take a collective breath here and look at the absolute mountain of unwritten rules we have just laid out on the table. We have arbitrary, illogical collocations. We have hidden, historically driven register rules. We have a complex psychological system of discourse markers. We have the physical blurring and blending of connected speech. And we have an invisible, highly subjective politeness system.
It's a lot.
It's overwhelming. If textbooks actively steer you wrong and grammar rules do not apply, how on earth do you actually fix this? How does a learner rewrite their brain?
The solution requires a fundamental paradigm shift in how you view language acquisition. It comes down to one inescapable rule. What you listen to determines how you sound. Input dictates output.
If you put garbage in, you get garbage out. If you put textbooks in, you get a textbook out.
Exactly. If your auditory input consists of formal audiobooks, scripted language learning podcasts, slow instructional videos, and academic lectures, your output will be formal, scripted, slow, and academic. You cannot produce the rhythm of a casual conversation if you never actually listen to one. To sound natural, you absolutely must transition to consuming unscripted, authentic, messy conversation.
We are talking about two people sitting at a table interrupting each other.
Yes, podcasts where people talk over one another, unscripted reality television, casual YouTube vloggers, documentary interviews. And crucially, this input must be targeted to the specific domain you want to improve. If you want to master professional politeness pragmatics, you need to listen to unscripted professional podcasts, industry leaders casually discussing their fields with peers. If you want to sound natural at a dinner party, you need to listen to comedy podcasts or conversational shows where people are relaxed using heavy discourse markers. You have to immerse your brain in the specific auditory environment you want to eventually inhabit.
But listening passively while driving to work or doing the dishes isn't enough to physically rewire the muscles in your mouth, is it? You can listen to Jimi Hendrix play guitar for 10 years, but that doesn't mean your fingers know how to play the solo. There has to be a physical bridge between hearing the naturalness and producing it.
There is, and it is the single most effective practice an advanced learner can adopt. It bridges the gap between passive recognition and active physical production. It is called shadowing.
Shadowing. Let's break down the actual mechanics of this because it sounds a bit abstract. It's essentially the linguistic version of lip syncing, right? You put on headphones, play a clip of a native speaker, and you talk along with them. But why is this so much more effective than just sitting down, getting a pen, and logically studying the rules of assimilation and schwa?
Because logic is too slow. When you are in a live conversation, you do not have the cognitive bandwidth to recall a rule about the alveolar ridge and then manually instruct your tongue to link two consonants. Shadowing works because it forcibly bypasses the analytical rule processing part of your brain.
How does it do that?
When you shadow properly, you are listening to a piece of authentic native audio, and you are simultaneously, with only a fraction of a second delay, repeating it out loud. You're trying to perfectly mimic the exact rhythm, the precise intonation, the rising and falling pitch, the physical reductions, the exact connected speech. You are not trying to understand the grammar, you are treating the voice like a musical instrument, and you are trying to match the exact melody. Because you are doing it simultaneously, your brain literally does not have time to process the grammar rules. It forces a shift from bottom-up processing, building a sentence, from individual blocks to top-down processing, where you swallow the entire sound shape whole.
It is pure muscle memory. It's like learning a martial art. If you think about the exact angle of your elbow during a punch, you're going to get hit in the face. You have to drill the movement until the body does it without asking the brain for permission.
That is a phenomenal analogy. When you shadow, you are drilling the martial art of speech. You are absorbing the full phonological and prosodic package all at once. You are mimicking the collocations, the discourse markers, the connected speech, before your analytical brain has a chance to interfere and say, wait, that's not how it's spelled. It is deliberate, intense practice that artificially recreates the immersion-based acquisition process that native-speaking children go through. A toddler does not learn the phrase turn it off by learning 3 separate vocabulary words and a phonetic rule about linking consonants. They hear the single blended sound shape turn night off 1,000 times, and their mirror neurons allow them to imitate it physically. Shadowing allows the adult learner to tap into that exact same primitive imitative neurological pathway. You stop trying to build the language like a math equation, and you start physically inhabiting it.
I think that concept, inhabiting the language rather than building it, is the perfect encapsulation of this entire deep dive. If you are an advanced learner stuck on this frustrating plateau, your goal is to let go of the blueprints. You have outgrown the rules. To cross the naturalness gap, you have to stop calculating and start absorbing. You have to embrace the arbitrary collocations, adopt the rhythms of the right register, lean into the messy reality of discourse markers, and train your mouth to blend the physical sounds.
And as we wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you with one final, deeper thought to mull over, which directly builds on this idea of physically inhabiting English. Have you ever noticed, or has anyone ever pointed out to you, that your actual personality seems to subtly shift when you switch from your native language to English? Many advanced learners report feeling like they are a slightly different version of them. Maybe they feel more rigid, less humorous, more serious, or less empathetic when they speak English compared to their mother tongue.
I hear this constantly from bilingual friends. They'll say, I am so much funnier in Spanish, or I am much warmer in Japanese. They feel trapped in a slightly stiffer version of themselves.
That feeling of being trapped is the ultimate consequence of the naturalness gap. The reason for that personality shift is deeply, inextricably tied to everything we unpacked today. If you are relying on strict, textbook grammar to communicate. You are inadvertently projecting a rigid, hyper-formal, heavily guarded version of yourself. Your true personality, your humor, your warmth, your nuance is trapped behind a thick armor of grammatical correctness. But as you begin to shadow, as you adopt the natural rhythms, as you learn to deploy discourse markers like you know and I mean to show empathy, as you calibrate your politeness to match the social context, your true, authentic personality is finally given the linguistic tools to translate across the barrier. Sounding natural isn't just a technical achievement. It is about finally sounding like you in a second language.
What a beautiful, profound perspective. It's not just about blending consonants. It is about setting your actual personality free from the textbook. We want to challenge you to start noticing these invisible paths today. Turn on a podcast, watch a documentary, and stop listening to the meaning. Listen to the collocations. Listen for the markers. Listen to the physical rhythm of the mouth. Stop worrying about being perfectly accurate and just try not to put ketchup on your ice cream. Thank you for joining us on this incredible deep dive.
We'll see you next time. Keep exploring.